Hi, everybody. Hi, Tasha.
Hey, Seth, good to see you.
This is Tasha Schore, and Tasha Schore is a pretty amazing human who I've known for a while, and we've become friends, and has this site called Parenting Boys Peacefully. And Tasha does a lot of work with families with boys with aggression, aggressive kiddos. And tell us first, as we start here, what does aggression, whether it's a boy or a girl, but I know it's mostly boys, but what with your work, but what does aggression have to do with executive function?
What does aggression have to do with executive function? Well, I would say that the first thing that popped into my mind was like our perception, right? As parents, when we have a child who's aggressive, who's acting aggressive, whatever that looks like, it might be hitting or talking back or spitting or whatever it is. We tend to, as adults, come from this place of they should know better, right? In other words, we're expecting them to be able to differentiate between right and wrong in the heat of the moment, which is an executive skill, right?
Right.
But
Yeah.
actually, in that moment, even though aggression is incredibly offensive to most of us and embarrassing and terrifying and all of the things, it's really just another way to show that they're off track. It's just another way for a child to show, hey, I'm struggling, and we need to remember that they're not in their thinking brain when they are acting aggressively. So we need to not respond as if they are.
Yeah, so when anybody's in an aggressive state of mind, we're in the amygdala, we're in the fight, flight, or freeze. Our adrenals are going, and we are feeling unsafe, and we're feeling threatened. And that front part of the brain, the executive function part of the brain, isn't there to help us, execute on things and do and plan and prioritize and organize and as you said, think logically and rationally. Yet we speak to them in that sort of a way, and that's what leads us into our topic here. And our topic today is about lecturing. So let's start with why do we what do we think? People do it so often they keep repeating the pattern. So why do we lecture?
I think we lecture because we don't know what else to do. And also because we are incredibly word based. In other words, like I have parents who I work with who all the time they'll tell me, well, my boy, told me he hates me, or my boy, um, told me he's never gonna, sit next to his sister again or something like it doesn't matter. But the point is these words, like they just like they go into our hearts like somebody like sort of sticking a sword in and twisting it, right? We take them to heart. And I am reminding parents all the time, these are just words. These are just words. This is just one way your child is communicating. And in that moment, it's not even like necessarily a clear communication. A much more accurate depiction, I think, of what's going on with that child is what are his behaviors showing us, right? Oh, sorry, what are his behaviors? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
What are his behaviors showing us about how he's feeling and what he's capable of in that moment, rather than what words are coming out of his mouth when things are hard?
Right. We're so stuck in the story, and we're using the lecture, the logic, and the reason as in the story, the context of the story that we perceive is going on, what seems to
Totally.
be logical, but it's
Totally.
not the whole picture. So you're saying we got to look at what's going on beneath the surface, what's actually what the behavior is telling us. So I love that, like just putting it to
Right.
that question, like what is this behavior telling me? What's the signal here? That's a great start right there.
Yeah.
So when we're resorting to these lectures, do you want to say more about like the why we do the lectures, or should we move
Yeah, I
into?
mean, I think that's pretty much why we do it. I think we really do it because we don't know what else to do, and because that's what's most comfortable, right? It's habit. It's what we know, and that's why we do it. I don't think there's yeah.
And you see this across the board with moms and dads, and all, and it happens with most of your clients, and
Absolutely. I mean, and oftentimes it goes along with punishing, right, or isolating the child, or doling out consequences as a result of the aggressive behavior, right? If you don't, stop If you don't put that salt shaker down right now, you're not going to get electronics later, or whatever it is. And some parents are even using reward charts, which seem more benign, but still aren't really helping us as parents help that child get to a place where they can be more flexible in whatever situation was setting them off in the first place.
So then, how do we stop lecturing? And what can we, if parents are like, well, what am I supposed to do? How do we,
Yeah.
what do you see people do instead?
Well, I have a litmus test that I tell people to do. I say, just like think about it like this. If you were to ask your child, like let's just take the boy who hits his sister, okay? And you're the parent and you're angry and the sister comes in crying to you and you stomp out to the brother and you say, you know better than that. Like, how dare you hit your sister? Blah blah blah. And and uh, the test is, if he were in a loving space, if you and he were in a different space that you sometimes share, which is like, cuddle on the couch reading a book or before bed, or just if you can just imagine any sweet moment that you're having with your child, right? If you were to ask him in that moment, do you think it's okay to hit your sister? What would he answer? And no parent has ever told me, oh, he would say it's okay. Or if they have said to me, well, yeah, he would just say it's okay. It's from a place of upset that he's doing that. Like, again, those are sort of just words. That's not really what's going on. He really does know right from wrong. And so, one thing I just like to remind parents of, and makes it easier to stop lecturing, is to remember that it's not going to get you where you want to go. It's just words. We are basically misdiagnosing the problem. Like, we're saying the problem is a lack of understanding on that child's part, when in fact the child knows very well that they shouldn't be hitting. It's not a lack of understanding. It's not a cognitive, inability to understand right from wrong, or a lack of a moral compass. And so we need to re-diagnose and figure out, okay, well, what really is going on, so that we can address that. Now, one of the things that I like to do is not spend too much time diving into like the specifics of the why, unless, of course, there's something obvious that's going on. Like, sometimes aggression rears its head around the start of the school year, like right now, right? When there's a big change. There might be something going on at school. It might just be like sort of bumps around the beginning of school, but maybe there's a bullying situation, or maybe the teacher's has a practice of inadvertently shaming that child in front of the class, calling on them when the child doesn't know the answer and this has happened and they feel embarrassed and the teacher keeps doing it, and maybe they don't mean to be shaming the child, but the child feels ashamed, and all of this can lead to yucko behaviors, right? So I think we just need to pay attention, but we don't necessarily have to know the exact reason why, unless there's something that we need to sort of address, like a bullying issue, for example. Most of the time, we don't need to know like the down and dirty details of why a child is acting aggressively in order to help them. And as you'll be telling people, I'm going to be teaching a course that I teach usually once a year, called Out with Aggression, a step-by-step practice to stop your boy's aggressive behaviors and lift your parenting confidence. And we dive into this stuff in that course. And even, should I tell them about the workshop a little bit?
Yeah, no, I'll share the workshop. I'll share the screen for that in a second.
Okay.
But I want to know, like, in that moment when they're lecturing and they're like, okay, I just remembered I don't want to be lecturing anymore. What can they say or do in that moment to sort of switch gears and stop moving in that direction?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Um, it, Here's sort of a funny thing that I like to say to parents. Sometimes, because aggression is so triggering for all of us, or for many of us, it's hard for us to just walk away. It's hard for us to kind of get off the train, if you will, right? We're like, we hop on that train of berating and shaming, and it's really hard. Even though in our head we're going, "Oh my God, I need to stop. This is horrible. I shouldn't be talking to my kid like this." Like, we can't get off of it. And so one thing that I love to do that I learned from my mentor is to actually have a parent lay down on the floor right there. Like just stop and drop. Like you're literally just laying down on the floor. Um, because what that does is a couple things. Like for you as a parent, what that does is bring you into a less powerful position. So you're not towering over your child. It's hard to get angry and upset and be overpowering when you're just like laying flat on your back on the floor, right? The other thing it does is it sort of shocks your kid out of whatever they're in, because this sort of competent adult who they generally look up to is suddenly, on the floor, small, like what is going on here? And they tend to get curious, and it just tends to change the energy of the room. So that's something that you can do. It's hard to just stop talking if you're maintaining your physical poise, right? If you stay big and bigger than your child, right? If you're standing tall, it's easier for us to like raise our voice and sort of flex our muscles, if you will, when we're big. So getting physically down low can really help.
And when I do want to show the workshop, but I have one more question here. Let me show this. So this is Tasha's main site again. This is parentingboyspeacefully.com, and then I'll put a link to this. This is the free workshop that's coming up. And Tasha's just really fantastic, really amazing, really articulate, and explains these things so well. But when we're sitting there, and now you've laid it, I love that. I've not heard that about the laying on the ground. That is a really great pattern to interrupt. And when we're doing that, one of the things that you said is try to figure out what's really going on underneath. And when you've talked with so many families, and I'm sure there's a lot of different things that are going on underneath, but is there sort of a general one or two or three things that it tends to be, or?
Yeah, it tends to be fear. That tends to be what's going on.
Thank you.
And
Yeah.
that's important for us to know as parents, because think about how much easier it is to empathize with a child who you feel is scared or who you think is scared versus empathizing with a child who you feel like is being mean or rude or inappropriate, right? It's hard to conjure up our feelings of empathy when we have all those thoughts going through our minds. So if we can remember that a child who is acting aggressively is likely very scared, and a parent might be like, well, what are they scared of? They have a great life. It's like, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. And you might never know the answer to that question. But for some reason, that's what their brain seems to be assessing the situation as, like unsafe, unsafe. And therefore they're fighting. And so what we need to do is not so much, not talk them down. It's hard to talk somebody down, but kind of act them down, if you will. So, in the course, in the workshop, we'll talk about ideas for actually us doing the work as parents, because we can't control what the child does, but we can absolutely control how we show up. And a child who's struggling with aggression needs limits. They need loving limits, right? We can't let them hurt us and hurt their siblings and hurt their friends. We need to come in and be the one to keep everybody safe. So, we talk about limits, we talk about play, we talk about, strengthening our relationship with our sweet boy, and all of there's lots that we can do.
Awesome.
Even without knowing exactly like what the why is specifically.
Thank you so much. And I'm with you. Sometimes we're like, but it's anger. It's not fear. No, they're one and the same. And as we said before, the nervous system is saying, I'm not safe, and I feel threatened, and that's what's going on. And if that's new to you, then as you go down this rabbit hole, you're going to really understand that. But that is so clear, I think, to you and I, and so many parents and people who do this sort of work and have dove in here. Like, that's what's going on. The body is afraid. So let me show you. This is, again, I'll put a link to this, and this is Tasha's main site, but you can join the workshop if you want. Thanks, Tasha, so much for being on the vlog today. I appreciate you. Any final words you want to say, or does that cover the?
Yeah, actually, I do want to say a couple things. Like, basically, or one thing. What I want to say is that if you're a parent out there and you're feeling hopeless, you're feeling like nothing has worked, you don't know what to do, you're terrified about your child's future, I don't want you to give up. Like there is so much you can do, and you're the perfect person to do it. There's nobody else who's going to take on the job, and there's nobody else who has the information or the love for the child, right, that you have, who could do anywhere near as good of a job as you can. So it's just about figuring out, how to do it. But you're the one. Don't give up hope. He needs you as his advocate, sometimes despite his behaviors, and that's okay too. You don't have to defend the behaviors, but we always get to stand up for our sweet boys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tasha. Thank you all for being here. Have a good day, everybody.
Thanks, Seth.